Have you ever wondered what happens between agony and glory, between the final breath and the first rays of resurrection? Not the pain of Friday, not the triumph of Sunday, but the space in between. The silent day. The day no one talks about, yet every soul walks through. Have you ever felt it? That strange, sacred silence where nothing seems to move, where heaven is quiet and earth holds its breath. That is the day we enter now. Holy Saturday. And it is far more than a pause in the calendar. It is the heartbeat of mystery, the echo of eternity waiting to break open. But before we begin, don't forget to like this video. It helps awaken hearts to God's truth. And comment below, what does Holy Saturday mean to you? Your reflection may be the light someone else needs in their own silence. And if this story stirs something deep within you, subscribe. Not for algorithms, but for revelation. Now come. Step gently. For we are about to walk through silence, through shadow, through the very threshold between life and death. It began with a cry. A voice lifted high above a blood-stained hill. It is finished. And the sky grew dark, and the curtain tore, and the earth shook. The Lamb had been slain. And then, stillness. The crowds dispersed. The soldiers went back to their duties. The disciples hid. And Jesus, the Word through whom all things were made, lay still in a tomb hewn from rock. The one who raised Lazarus now lay lifeless. The one who calmed the storm now was wrapped in linen. The light of the world extinguished, or so it seemed. But this was no ordinary silence. This was divine strategy. For while the world mourned and heaven wept, the Son of God descended. Not in defeat, but in power. Not as a victim, but as a victor in disguise. Into the realm of the dead he went. Into Sheol, into Hades, into the shadowed places where humanity's oldest fears still echoed. And what did he do there? He did what only God could do. He preached to the captives. He shattered the gates of death. He broke chains that no human hand could ever touch. This is the mystery the ancient creeds declare in quiet reverence. He descended into hell. Not as a soul lost, but as a king on mission. A king claiming back what belonged to him. The righteous dead, the faithful of ages past, the keys of death and Hades themselves. Can you imagine it? The silence of earth masking the roar of eternity? While Rome slept and the disciples wept, Jesus tore through the kingdom of darkness, light wrapped in flesh, storming the gates that had long held humanity hostage. The silence of Holy Saturday was not emptiness. It was invasion. It was revolution behind the veil. It was the Lion of Judah roaring without sound. And yet, above ground, the world saw only stillness. A tomb, a stone, a sealed promise. And perhaps this is why Holy Saturday is our day, the day we understand best. For we too know what it is to wait, to wonder, to sit in silence and ache for something to break. We know what it is to bury hope and not yet see it rise. To believe and yet feel the weight of stillness press upon our faith. But listen, Jesus has been here. He is the Lord of the silence. He made it sacred by walking through it. And that means your silence, your in-between, is not forsaken. It is filled, not with noise, but with purpose. Not with despair, but with promise. For Holy Saturday is not the absence of God. It is the mystery of God moving where eyes cannot see, working in silence, fighting battles in the dark, rearranging the grave from the inside out. And so, the silence stretched on. 3 days. 3 days of waiting. The sky that had cracked open with Christ's cry now hung in stillness, and the earth held its breath, as if fearing the return of its Creator. Beneath the surface, however, beneath the stone and the silence, something was stirring. Something ancient. Something powerful. It is said that in the deepest silence, the greatest forces of creation are at work. But in our world, we've forgotten that truth. We often think of silence as absence. We think of it as emptiness, as something lost, something to be filled. But the silence of Holy Saturday was not empty. It was pregnant with purpose. Because while the world slept, while the disciples doubted and the Roman guards grew bored, Christ descended. He did not lie in the grave passively. No, he descended to the very depths, to the darkest recesses of existence, to the place where death itself held sway. And in that darkness, he was not defeated. He was not lying down in submission. He was fighting not with sword or spear, but with the very essence of his being, with the power of life itself. It is in this silence that we find the essence of God's mysterious work. He did not come to earth just to live and die. He came to conquer death, to strip away its dominion once and for all. And so, he journeyed to the place where death reigned, and with each step, he took the keys of death and hell. With each passing moment, he made a mockery of darkness, stripping it of its power. This is what we must understand. Holy Saturday is not simply a pause in the story. It is a battle fought in the shadows. The forces of good and evil were not simply waiting for the resurrection. They were at war. And in this war, it was Christ, in his silence, who struck the decisive blow. Why silence? Why did God choose silence to carry out his greatest victory? Why didn't he rise immediately? Why didn't he burst forth in glory in the very moment of his death? Because silence is sacred. Silence holds more power than we realize. It is in the silence that we are most vulnerable, most raw, most human. And it is in the silence that we encounter the deepest truths of who we are and who God is. In silence, we stop pretending. We stop filling the void with our distractions and our noise. And in that stillness, we hear the quiet voice of God. It is in those moments when nothing seems to happen, when all is still, that God is most present. His silence speaks louder than any words. It is in this silence that he reveals his deepest plans, not in a hurry, not in rush, but in peace. And so it was with Jesus. He waited. He allowed the silence of death to become the womb of resurrection. He entered into it fully. And in doing so, he gave us the greatest gift, the gift of waiting. The gift of trusting that even when we don't hear him, even when we don't see him, he is at work, deeper than we can understand. Holy Saturday invites us to enter that space. The space of waiting, the space of not knowing, the space of silence. It is in this waiting that we encounter God. And just like Christ, we too must descend into our own silences. Have you ever experienced a silence like this? A silence that felt as though it could swallow you whole? Perhaps you've faced a season of grief, a season of waiting, a time when all your prayers seemed unanswered. Maybe you've gone through a period of doubt, where God seemed absent, where his presence was distant. This is your Holy Saturday. This is the space where God is closest, where he is working most profoundly, even though we cannot see it. He is making all things new. He is redeeming the time. He is gathering the pieces of your life, of your heart, even in the silence. And this silence, this waiting, is not wasted. Because, just as the earth bore Christ's body in the tomb, so too does our silence bear the seed of resurrection. We wait, but we do not wait in vain. We sit, but we do not sit idle. The Spirit of God is moving, even in the quietest moments, even in the darkest places. And one day, that silence will break open, just as the tomb was broken open, and we will witness the glory of what God has been doing all along. So, dear friend, in your Holy Saturday, in your season of waiting, in your time of silence, do not despair. Do not lose hope. For even in this, God is working. Even in this, resurrection is coming. The silence will not last forever. The tomb will not remain sealed. The dawn is near. And when it comes, It will come with a roar that shakes the heavens, a roar that will awaken all things. But for now we wait. We wait in the silence. We wait for the victory to be revealed, for the light to pierce the darkness. And we wait with confidence, for the silence is not the absence of God, but the womb of His glory. But what happens in the silence of Holy Saturday is not just a waiting for something to come. It is the power of God's hidden work, the quiet shaping of eternity in the unseen places. How often do we assume that God is absent in our waiting? How often do we wonder if He is silent because He is distant, disinterested, or indifferent to our suffering? How often do we mistake His silence for a sign of defeat, as though He is not moving, not working, not saving? But remember, the silence of Holy Saturday is not the silence of abandonment. It is not the silence of neglect. It is the silence of preparation. It is the quiet before the storm, the waiting before the miracle. And in that silence, God is doing something far greater than we could ever comprehend. For what happened on that day, between the darkness of Good Friday and the glory of Easter Sunday, was the ultimate act of divine transformation. God, in His perfect wisdom, knew that the greatest work of salvation would not come in a moment of explosion, but in the stillness of surrender. In the stillness, Christ was not passive. He was not just lying there in a tomb, waiting for His body to revive. He was actively overcoming. He was going into the deepest places of human experience, into death itself, into the grave where the enemy held dominion, and He was wrestling for us. When we think of Christ's victory, we often think of it in terms of triumph over death in an instant, a flash of glory, a sudden burst of light. But the resurrection did not simply happen in an instant. It happened through a process. And Holy Saturday is the beginning of that process. Christ's descent into the grave was not a defeat. It was a conquest. He entered the very stronghold of the enemy and took the keys of death. He shattered the chains that bound humanity to sin and suffering. And He did it all in the silence. He did it in the grave. He did it in the space where no one could see, where no one could hear, and where no one could hope. So, you might ask, what does this mean for me today? How do we find meaning in the silence of Holy Saturday when our lives seem so full of noise, so full of distractions, so full of chaos? It means that even in your darkest, most uncertain moments, God is working. It means that, just as Christ entered the depths of the grave to bring forth life, He is entering the depths of your life, the places of your heart where you think He cannot reach, where you think it's too late, too far gone, too broken. The silence of Holy Saturday is not a void. It is a place of resurrection in waiting, a space where the seeds of new life are being planted in the unseen soil of your soul. We cannot always see it. We do not always understand it. But just as the grain of wheat must fall to the ground and die before it can bear fruit, so too does our own journey through silence prepare us for the coming of new life. Through our waiting, through our tears, through our moments of feeling abandoned, God is planting the resurrection. This is why Holy Saturday is so crucial. It is the day that teaches us to trust in the unseen. It teaches us that God's work does not always look like we think it should. It teaches us that sometimes, in order to bring about the greatest transformation, God must work in the dark, in the quiet, in the places we cannot see. And it is also in this silence that we are called to step out in faith. To trust that even when God seems distant, He is closer than we think. To believe that even in the moments when it feels as if everything is falling apart, He is working out His perfect will, preparing us for the great victory to come. This is where our journey of faith intersects with the story of Holy Saturday. We are all waiting for something, for healing, for restoration, for breakthrough. We are all living in moments of waiting, sometimes feeling as though we are surrounded by darkness, by silence, by unanswered prayers. But Holy Saturday reminds us that God is never idle. He is never absent. He is always working even when we cannot see it. And so, the message of Holy Saturday is simple yet profound. The silence is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the beginning of something far greater than we could ever imagine. It is the moment when the seed of resurrection is planted in the soil of your soul, waiting to break through the surface, to rise in glory. The silence is the waiting room of new life. So, as you reflect on Holy Saturday, remember that your silence, your waiting, is not in vain. It is the moment when God is preparing you for something far greater. And just as He raised Christ from the dead, He will raise you, not in an instant, but through a process. Through the waiting, through the silence, through the descent into the grave. For the resurrection is coming, and when it comes, it will come with a power, with a glory, that will shatter the silence, shatter the darkness, and reveal the victory that was won on the cross. As we move closer to the resurrection, we can sense the glory that awaits. The silence of Holy Saturday has its purpose. It is to prepare us for the great reveal, for the moment when the darkness will be split wide open by the light of Christ. In the stillness, Christ was preparing not just for His own resurrection but for yours. He was not only overcoming death, He was preparing a way for you to walk out of your own tomb, out of your own darkness, and into the fullness of life. Through His resurrection, we are reborn. And the silent weight of Holy Saturday teaches us how to embrace that rebirth. Now, as we approach the dawn of Easter, we are invited to step out of our own silent tombs and into the light, to rise with Christ, to experience the power of the resurrection in our own lives, not just as a historical event, but as a personal reality. Because the silence has ended, the stone is rolled away, the tomb is empty, and in that empty tomb, in that broken silence, new life is born. And now, the silence is breaking. After the darkness of Holy Saturday, after the stillness of waiting, the dawn begins to pierce the sky. The stone that once sealed the tomb is rolling away. The earth that lay in mourning, holding its breath, is now quaking in anticipation. Because the resurrection is here. The moment has come. The stone is rolled away not just from a tomb, but from the hearts of humanity. The silence that once enveloped the world is now shattered by the sound of victory. Christ, the risen King, steps forth into the light, His victory over death and sin forever proclaimed. And yet, as the stone is rolled away, it is not just a historical event that is revealed. It is a spiritual truth that is made known to all. For the resurrection is not simply the triumph of one man over the grave. It is the triumph of every person who has ever walked through the darkness. It is the victory of each of us who has known sorrow, who has known loss, who has known despair. The resurrection is the promise that death will not have the final say. That darkness will not win. That life will triumph. This is the great message of Easter, that the silence is over, that the waiting has ended, that Christ is risen, and with Him, we are raised to new life. The tomb is empty, the grave has been defeated, and in that empty tomb, there is a new creation. There is new hope. There is new life. But here's the most profound part. The resurrection does not simply mean that Christ has risen from the dead. It means that we are invited to rise with Him. The resurrection is not just about Christ's victory over death. It is about our participation in that victory. It is about us stepping into the new life that He has won for us. It is about us being raised up from our own tombs of despair, of fear, of hopelessness, of sin. Have you ever felt trapped? Trapped in your own circumstances, in your own mind, in your own sin? Have you ever wondered if there is any way out? Have you ever wondered if the tomb of your past mistakes, your shame, your regrets, will ever be rolled away? It will be. Because of Christ's resurrection, there is nothing that is beyond the reach of His power. No sin is too great. no darkness too deep, no tomb too sealed. The resurrection has come to set you free, and it is through the power of the resurrection that you are invited to step into your own new life. So, how do we respond to this? What do we do with the gift of resurrection that is now offered to us? We live. We live in the truth of what has been done for us. We live in the hope that comes from knowing that death has been defeated. We live as though the tomb is empty, as though the victory is already ours. We live as new creations, born again through the power of Christ's resurrection. But living in the light of the resurrection also means that we are called to carry that light into the world. We are not merely resurrected for ourselves. We are resurrected so that we can share that resurrection with others, so that we can bring hope to those who are still trapped in their own tombs, so that we can bring life to those who are still in the silence of Holy Saturday, still waiting for the dawn. And this, my friends, is the greatest message of all. The resurrection is not just a promise for us alone. It is a promise for the world. It is the promise that the silence will not last forever, that the darkness will not prevail. It is the promise that Christ will come again, and when he does, all things will be made new. But until that day, we are called to live as people of the resurrection. We are called to be the light in the darkness, to be the hope in the silence, to be the life in the waiting. For in Christ, there is no tomb too dark, no silence too deep, no brokenness too great. The resurrection is here, and because of it, we are no longer bound by the silence. We are no longer bound by death. We are no longer bound by our past. We are free, and we are alive. But the story does not end here. The resurrection is not a one-time event. It is a continuous reality. Each day, we rise again. Each day, we are called to live in the victory of the resurrection, to experience new life in every moment. The same power that raised Christ from the dead is alive in us, empowering us to live as new creations, to walk in the fullness of his victory. So, as we move forward from this moment, remember this: the resurrection is not just an event that happened 2,000 years ago. It is the reality of your life today. It is the truth that you walk in every day, the truth that guides you through the darkness, through the silence, through the tombs of life. You are a new creation. You have been raised to new life. You are free. You are alive. And because of that, we can face the world with hope, with courage, and with the knowledge that the tomb is empty, that Christ is risen, and that we too shall rise with him. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to invite you to take a step in faith. The resurrection is not just something to be admired from afar. It is something to be lived. It is something to be embraced. And it is something to be shared with the world. If you feel the weight of Holy Saturday in your life right now, the silence, the waiting, the darkness, remember this: the resurrection is coming. It is coming for you. And it is coming for everyone who is lost, who is hurting, who is waiting in the tombs of despair. If you have never experienced the resurrection for yourself, now is the time. Open your heart. Embrace the new life that Christ offers. Let him roll away the stone. Let him bring you out of the darkness and into the light. And if you have already experienced the resurrection, live it. Live it boldly. Live it with joy. Live it with purpose. Live it in a way that draws others into the hope that you have found. Christ is risen. And because he lives, you can live too.